Prized letters. Continuation of letter number 5. Yes, indeed, in place of intelligence, science has given you the DNA molecules as your source of existence, your supreme leader, your director of creation upon materialistic, flimsy cells. The whole of creation must depend for its survival. Behold the glorious DNA, Lord of your creation. From whence did the DNA cells draw their intelligent directional powers? Science is quite satisfied now that it has been able to satisfactorily explain why the various species of every kind replicate themselves so accurately and consistently. Science would have you believe that you live in a purely mechanistic universe, that the phenomenon of evolution arises out of chance mutations and the survival of the fittest. If you study the various organisms of creation, the multifold and differing activities of related species, can you truly believe in such an unlikely materialistic concept? It has been no mere coincidence that, today, to enable you to discover the vast intelligence behind creation, you have numerous creative people who embark on difficult journeys to explore, determine, and photograph the habitats and habits of wild creatures and plants. You are entertained and instructed by a feast of facts and photographs of the wonders of your universe. In my time on earth, I had no such marvels to refer to in order to teach the Jews the universal truth of existence. I only had domestic animals and birds to use as examples of the marvelous inventiveness and intelligence and awareness apparent in every living thing. Nowhere has it been written in the Gospels that I referred to a high and mighty Jehovah as creator as was customary with the Jewish leaders. No, I turned to the countryside, the flowers and birds, and tried to show my fellow countrymen that they were surrounded by a marvelous, miraculous creation. Over 2,000 years ago in your dimension, we lacked your modern scientific background to be able to intelligently observe and explain the activity of what I termed the Father everywhere around them. To discover your true source of being, I ask you to take stock of the unimaginable and indescribable complexity and diversity of purposeful work plainly evident in penguins and pigs. Can the human mind replicate any of the most basic of activities within, say, the digestive system, which swiftly summons up the requisite enzymes and hormones necessary for digestion? How dare the finite mind, which is incapable of perceiving clearly the true creative process governed by instinctual knowledge, presume to state unequivocally, defying contradiction, that it understands the true origins of creation and the forces out of which creation took form? What arrogance! These men can only think according to what their eyes tell them. I view the present scientific ignorance with loving compassion, a degree of amusement, and a great all-consuming passion to puncture their pride. For, until someone can penetrate their self-satisfaction and position of infallibility, a true mating of eternal verities and human scientific knowledge can never take place. But it must take place. Otherwise, human spiritual evolution will remain at a standstill. The scientific mind is too full of finitely devised book lore, accepted formulas and equations, and the need for your fellows' approval to permit mystical penetration by higher intelligences. On my behalf, I ask readers of these letters to form an association to challenge science and ask, at what point in the evolution of the material world is consciousness first discernible? I repeat and mean what I say. Ask the scientist at what point in the evolution of the world is consciousness first discernible? In the living cell? If in the living cell, ask whether it was discernible in the living molecules which combined to make a cell and encase itself in such an intelligently designed membrane, permitting the intake of selected food and excretion of toxic waste. How does it recognize toxic waste? And if it should be conceded that consciousness might be present in living molecules, should you not ask whether the chemical properties which became a living molecule might not themselves have possessed consciousness, which eventually impelled and propelled them into the life-giving combination to make a molecule? And having gone back thus far into the origins of existence, the chemical properties, you must still question why consciousness should only become a viable presence within the chemicals. Why not within the elements in which individuality first took shape? And if in the elements, why should it be denied that consciousness propels the electrical particles to form the elements? Is it rational to deny such a possibility? And having reached such a possibility, should you not go further and ask from whence comes electromagnetism? What is the reality of electricity more than streaks of fierce light now described by science as photons and electrons? And what is the reality of magnetism more than twofold energies of bonding and rejection, energy impulses which have brought stability and order into chaos? Ask science. From whence comes electromagnetism, which is responsible for the most basic steps in the creation of an ordered and orderly universe of an unimaginable complexity and diversity? Number 4. The ultimate universal dimension. I will now attempt to put into your words that which is beyond all words and presently beyond all individualized earthly comprehension. Therefore, the intellect, although it assists the brain to understand intellectually the spiritual realities I am putting before you, it also creates a barrier to true spiritual perception and experience. For this reason, regard the following references to the ultimate universal dimension as only guidelines. Ideas, shadow consciousness forms of the reality behind and within your universe. Take each idea, one by one, into meditation. What I am about to explain is entirely within and of consciousness without parameters and boundaries. If you are sufficiently spiritually evolved to follow me there, beyond the words, you will begin to understand spiritually all I am trying to tell you. The words will guide you towards and then unlock new vistas of being for you. Persevere. The light will gradually, perhaps imperceptibly, penetrate your mind and you will have little bursts of insight. There are many who have experienced a little burst of insight, have briefly felt a touch of divine consciousness, and then, hardly daring to continue to believe in such a transcendent moment of awareness, have begun to question, doubt, and finally dispel the little inflow of divine consciousness. Beware you do not do this. This belief will set you back and mesh you in the material plane of existence more than you will ever know. Whatever you are given and able to receive, hold fast to it and do not doubt. Doubt destroys steady progress because it creates its own consciousness forms which will suppress and even eradicate the insight you had gained previously. Therefore, your choice of thoughts, belief or disbelief, doubt or faith, construct or destroy your progress in your search for truth. Any denial erases from your consciousness the progress which has been previously made. Furthermore, The higher you ascend in spiritual truth, the more powerful do your thoughts become. Therefore, create and hold fast to your own spiritual momentum and allow no one to intrude and undermine that momentum. Hold firm to your former perceptions. In times of doubt, cruise along in positive thoughts, using enlightening affirmations, clinging to earlier inspirational guidance when your consciousness frequencies of vibration were higher. By use of your willpower, choosing affirmations containing golden nuggets of spiritual truth, return to this higher level of consciousness again and again. Do not, through mental laziness, wholly surrender to the ebb and flow of spiritual consciousness energies and become a spiritual seesaw. I cannot emphasize this danger of self-obstruction strongly enough. Become actively aware of it. If you know anything of the accounts of my life in Palestine, you will recall that I, too, suffered the phenomenon of ebb and flow of spiritual consciousness and found it necessary to absent myself in the hills to pray and meditate and renew my spiritual strength. Therefore, understand your dry periods, but do not give way to them by yielding passively to an undesirable change in your attitudes and mental emotional patterns. As you conscientiously draw upon your source of being for new strength and the upliftment of your consciousness frequencies, so will these negative periods be greatly reduced in strength and duration. I repeat, at all times beware how you use your minds. Let your mental activity always be constructive, that it may contribute to your own spiritual growth rather than its constant hindrance. Number 5. My purpose in coming through these letters. Having said all the above, and proceeding to dictate the rest of the letter, the recorder of my words began to question the likely public reception of this letter because it seemed to her too pragmatic to appeal to people who are accustomed to picturing some magnificent power or being or utterly other which has given birth to the universe. Indeed, I have made numerous efforts to describe the immensity of the power out of which all things have come, but as I have said, it is impossible for me to describe in human terms the reality of the source of your being. Those spiritually evolved souls who have been lightly infused with divine consciousness report the experience to be utterly beautiful and glorious and entirely unforgettable, but still not fully describable in human terms. This mystical experience is possible when the frequencies of vibration of the mind are already raised and the entire consciousness is suffused with rays of divine consciousness. It is a condition that involves the feelings more than the intellect and brain cells. In this case, where I have to infuse my recorder's mind and brain cells with a description of the reality of your source of being, and she has to interpret in words, I have to take care not to interfere too forcefully with the frequencies of vibrations of consciousness in which my recorder's brain cells are working. There have been occasions when it was dangerous to proceed any further, and I have interrupted the work of her computer to break the contact. Before you begin to study, meditate, and absorb the following pages, I want to make it clear to all who read these letters that my purpose in coming through them is, first and foremost, to dispel the myths which have surrounded my human persona and teachings. It is my intention that religious dogma and doctrines should eventually die a natural death, worldwide, as complete a death as the animal sacrifices in the Temple of Solomon. Secondly, I have also come to help the churches let go of their archaic notions of God and sin. No true spiritual progress is possible until the dawning of a clear realization that each person is responsible for the way his or her life develops. That's it for today. Thank you. I love you. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Bye.